All right, here we go.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jack Debnam. I'm a board member with the Board of Transportation for the state of North Carolina. Finished up as board member for Division 14. Thank goodness I got away from Brian. Now I'm board member at large for the rural areas. Before we get started, everyone should already have their app downloaded. Is there anybody other than me that probably doesn't know how to do it? But we'll go ahead, we'll check with that. And with that out of the way, I'd like to welcome you to the discussion of ways our urban and rural areas can mutually benefit from stronger collaboration. To offer their perspectives, I have Rob Heights, Lisa Hughes, and Joel Strickland. Rob is the Waynesville Town Manager in Haywood County. Lisa is the Yadkin County Manager. And Joel is the Executive Director of FAMPO, which is the Fayetteville Area Metropolitan Planning Organization. Our session today is going to be audience interactive, and as we ask our panelists how transportation systems have mutually benefited urban and rural centers. If you have a question, a microphone will be made available to you, and I'd like to kick things off by asking all of you to think of a specific instance where access to urban or rural community centers has benefited your town, your county, or your MPO. And Joel, would you like to give us a little update as to what's happening in Fayetteville and how you've worked with the MPOs and were a former RPO employee?
Sure. As Mr. Debnan said, I am the Executive Director of the Fayetteville Area MPO, and glad to be here and able to talk with you today. I think I have a little bit of a unique perspective because while I am on the metropolitan side of things with the MPO now, and I've been with FAMPO for 7 years, I also worked with the RPO for 9 years. So I've seen the challenges of both sides. I know it's the two are unique with their challenges. You share some challenges, but there are unique challenges for RPOs that you don't see as much in the MPOs and vice versa. In the Fayetteville area and with our MPO, we're very fortunate, or I think we're very fortunate in the fact that we're housed by Cumberland County. I think we're the only MPO in the state that's housed by a county. But in our building is also the Mid-Carolina RPO. We're in the same building. We've shared staff at times. We've traded staff at times. So we're very familiar with each other, and it makes it very easy for us to collaborate on planning, on projects, anything of the sort, while also sometimes sharing resources where it's applicable. We've had some projects, of course, that have crossed boundaries that we've been able to work on and that have been success stories for us. And I'm glad to be here and glad to be able to share this perspective of the two.
Okay, my name is Lisa Hughes, and I'm in a very rural county that's on the western side of Winston-Salem. And most people say, where is Yadkin? They've never heard of it. Even the people in Winston-Salem, when you say Yadkin County, they think we're hours away and not just 15 to 20 minutes. We do have our struggles with transportation because we don't have public transportation. We don't have Uber. We don't have, well, we did have PART that had a couple of routes that came into our county, but transportation, public transportation is an issue. We have had committees and looking at grants on our older population because our communities are getting older and older, and they get transported to the hospital and they don't have a way home. And that is another real issue that we are exploring different ways that we can work with it. Within our county, I serve on the TCC, and we're currently working on a community transportation plan that's a multi-county plan. And for us, with projects, we have found that the best way to meet all of our needs is by all of us working together. So even the larger counties, the cities, the towns, we all try to prioritize what each one of us needs and try to take turns as much as we can so that everything doesn't always go to the big cities and the big counties. So we try to work together.
My name is Rob Heights, and my latest city is Waynesville. It's far up in the mountains as you can get. But I've been all the way from Southport through Lumberton, Durham, Pittsboro, Monroe, Statesville. So I've kind of covered both the length and the breadth of transportation issues. And one thing that I can say with certainty is the creation of the RPO and the MPO was one of the best communication tools that we as a governing group created. Not only do our elected officials get to press for their own needs, but they learn about every other elected official's needs as well. And almost as soon as it was created, our board members came back and say, well, you know, we want this highway to be widened, but boy, you should hear what Mayor so-and-so has got. He's got a disaster, so we rated his project above ours, and I agree with that. That didn't happen in the 70s and the 80s. We were just islands between the Mail Service Center in Raleigh and the district office in the city. So I think the democracy of the MPO has helped us all. I think there's a much of a difference in the way we look at our projects if we are located on an interstate or in a rural city like Waynesville or Pittsboro. And you know, starting out, we were happy just to get a sidewalk and maybe a little curb and gutter, but we would get to Lumberton and they'd be talking about 6-laning I-95 and it taking 6 years, and 4-laning I-40 and I-77 in Statesville. So those of us that have managed interstate communities are far different than those that manage smaller communities. But the communication between the district and the division offices and local government is the key to it. And I have to hold my hat out to Brian Birch, who is an incredible communicator. He is sensitive to the preservationists and to the needs of the community, and he presses modern technology through a project, but once again, if he sees a wall that's been in place since the 1850s or 60s, he understands not to just knock it down and put a bike path there, even though ASHTA or even though the standards of the time require it. So I think enabling the division engineers to have policymaking authority over statewide projects has really helped the process.
I'd like to ask the three of you, what are some of the innovative measures your community has used to address transportation challenges? Joel?
I don't know how familiar y'all may be with the Fayetteville area, but from the MPO perspective in Fayetteville, there's been several studies done, publications that have called Fayetteville one of the least pedestrian-friendly cities in the United States, which isn't something we're proud of. But it's something that we've tried to work on, and it's something that's taken a lot of time and a lot of mindset changes and a lot of transition from being very highway-centric to looking more at the pedestrian side of things. One thing that we've done as staff just in the last 4 years that we think is really neat, and some of you may be familiar with it, but we've done what's called a Better Block project. And we did our first one two and a half years ago in a part of Fayetteville that was already pretty much set up to be pedestrian friendly, but because of the design of the roadways and because of the lack of pedestrian accommodations, it wasn't pedestrian friendly. So if you're not familiar with the Better Block project, what we do is you go out for half a day, and the way we did it for a half a day. We took a 4-lane road, narrowed it down to 2 lanes, put in temporary bike facilities, put in temporary crosswalks, and so you set it up from the transportation standpoint, but then you also turn it into an event. So we invite, small businesses or food trucks and those type things to come out and set up around the event. You go out, you set up tables and chairs and parking lots and those types of things so you can attract people to actually see what the event is doing and to see what you can do with these roadways and with these pedestrian facilities. And when you have the other things there and kind of almost turn it into a block party, it keeps them around a little longer, and it gives them something to draw them in and actually let them see what you're doing. But to get back to the transportation side of it, we had great support from our public leaders, from our public officials, and we had a lot of them turn out. And it's a great way for them to see what you can do without them having to make a true commitment to anything. Like I said, it's temporary, so they can see it. They can say, this is a great idea, this is something we need to work on. Or they can say, we don't like this at all, and the only thing you've lost is a little bit of staff time and some hard work. But we've been really fortunate with the one we did in what's called the Haymont area of Fayetteville. Since that time, in the 2 years that we did it, we've had 2 crosswalks installed since then, and we've had a pedestrian signal put in. So those are small things, but we consider them victories. And now we're getting ready to do our second Better Block project in March of this year along Murkison Road, right near Fayetteville State University. And it's been a great partnership between us and the city of Fayetteville and the Realtors Association. I should have mentioned them. The Realtors Association played a key role in this and helping us put this together, or putting it together. But it shows the opportunity, or it is the opportunity to show your local leaders as well as the general public what you can do with roadways. That's a little bit different than just doing something like a PowerPoint presentation or just drawing them in to look at a plan. It's a little bit different, a little bit more involved, and it offers something for them to have fun with also. So we're really looking forward to our second one. Like I said, we're doing it in March, and we considered the first one to be a real success.
I was saying Yadkin, for our pedestrian pathways, those are mostly going to be within our towns. And we have 4 smaller towns in Yadkin. I think the largest has a population of about 2,600 people. I think one of the biggest things for us, and going back, there's always history involved in everything. And sometimes it can be a love-hate relationship between counties and DOT. Counties and towns may want certain things, and DOT says, no, that's not going to work. And DOT goes ahead and does what they want to do anyway. And that causes, unfortunately, a lot of pushback, sometimes from citizens and from local governments. And it's a matter of finding the balance, because it's important that we work together. We all want our roads to be safer. We want our citizens to be able to move rapidly through places within the speed limit, of course. But I think it's important that we all work together and find that balance. Another thing that's kind of unique about Yadkin, while we are small, we do have I-77 that goes through our county, and we have Highway 421 and Highway 601 and Highway 67. So we have a lot of state highways and the interstate, and right now the interstate's not a real good place to travel. If you can avoid I-77 going through Yadkin, please do. We've had a lot of accidents there with tractor trailers due to road construction. And I'll say that DOT has been very responsive in the highway patrol and trying to help make that a safer commute through there. we do have opportunities. I think there are ways that we can all continue to partner and just finding that balance between what DOT wants, what the communities want, and make all of our communities better.
Waynesville's not unlike many tourist-related cities in that we have to balance the expectations of the tourist who's coming for a true mountain experience with the citizens and a growing number of retirees. And we have to create a safe enough road system where you can have a retiree driving at 22 miles an hour from Florida, is scared to death about being in the mountains, and you know, a guy with a dually that's got huge diesel thrush muffler that's pushing on his tail. And so one of the challenges we all have is to create a road system that's safe enough for a large number of out-of-state retirees to travel. The expectation of our main industry is that we need to provide as many recreational opportunities as they can. And as I say, they come actually expecting people to be still dressed in buckskins and have flintlock rifles. I mean, people come to me all the time and say, well, where are the Indians, or where are the was that guy in fatigues with an AR-15, a mountain man? No, he's a sovereign citizen, and we stay 10 feet away from him. So we have a balancing act, and what we do well with, especially with Asheville, who has the same issues as we do, is that we blend a very active walking trail program with a bicycle program, and as well as a very active project to make our narrow roads safer. And that, of course, means islands, sidewalks, bike trails, and as Mr. Dedman knows, in Silva, they're going to have it take 72 businesses to widen NC 107 to Western Carolina, which is getting to be a major Western employment node as well as student node. So there's some pushing and shoving going on, because in America you want what you want and you don't want anybody to tell you different. And I think that the local governments and the DOT are doing as much as they can to bring these road systems up to a safe level, and also provide funding for walking trails and sidewalks. Waynesville's probably the only town I've ever had that has an active hatchery-supported trout stream down through the middle of it, and we're proud of that. But it puts tremendous pressure on us to have good stormwater systems, and with the road improvements going on, DOT's doing a great job of mitigating the stormwater coming off the roadways. And we also require new development to dedicate right-of-way in what's called the trout buffer, dedicate it to the city so that we can put in a walking trail, and that's done in concert with our MPO and our rating system. So none of this is innovative. It's just mixing it up with a tremendous amount of sensitivity about different citizen and tourist requirements.
Well, Ralph is a little different than most of us because he has an MPO and an RPO that you work with. He talks about he lives in a rural area. I live in an area that's so rural that I have to walk to the end of my driveway to even use my telephone. So it's the transportation communication is a hard part for people that don't live outside of an urban area. How many people live in a rural area from in here? So there's only about a third of us. You know, my public transportation out where I live is yellow and got school bus written on the side of it. That's about as far as we go with that. And we don't understand, we do understand the issues of urban living. I grew up in Raleigh. Got out as fast as I could, but that's another thing. It's hard for us to be sympathetic with some of the urban population when we come down to Greensboro and there's roads everywhere and you can travel around, or you can get to the beach from Raleigh in 2.5, 3 hours, or I can be in 5 other state capitals quicker than I can be in Raleigh. It will be 8:30 to 9 o'clock tonight before I even get back home. And most of you that are urban dwellers don't understand what, you know, you get upset about a 30-minute commute or a 45-minute commute. Well, it takes me an hour to get to the closest shopping center. So it's, you know, we have different aspects, but we have interstates, we have a national park, we have the Cherokee Indian Reservation and the casino. When they did their initial study for the casino, their core gambler was coming from a 3-hour drive. 20 years ago, there were 20 million people within a 3-hour drive of where I live, and we've not improved the transportation. So it's something that really needs to be looked at, as far as we're drawing all the tourists to the coast and to the mountains mainly, and that's one of our economic drivers, and it's just the attention is not being paid to our rural areas that I think they need to.
Yeah, I fully understand those concerns from Mr. Debnam from working with the RPO in the past. There are definitely, I believe, more challenges to getting major projects, especially done in the rural areas, than within the urban areas. You know, what I would say, one thing that's from the urban standpoint and working with RPOs, you know, I think nowadays with SPOT being the way it is and with STI being the way it is, it's so important for RPOs and MPOs to have conversations about these projects that overlap boundaries, to make sure that, you know, you're maximizing your project submissions from each way, to make sure that you're putting points on common projects to help those projects get done. You know, from the Fayetteville MPO standpoint, we meet with the Mid-Carolina RPO when it's time for prioritization, as well as the Lumber River RPO. There are 2 boundary RPOs. So we try to work with them we try to look at it first off from a regional standpoint and not just from a standpoint of our own MPO. You know, the issues that Mr. Debnam's talking about are issues to people not just within our urbanized area, but to people who may be out in the RPO but are coming into our urbanized area. So it's important for us to work with our RPOs and address those concerns, and really to try to work together to achieve some of these projects that may be hard to get done. So again, the communication and coordination is so key from our viewpoint from an urban area. And you know, one of the projects that we've recently had some success with, and it took years and years and years, and some of you may be familiar with it in here, but NC24, which kind of destinates, and it keeps going, but it is in Fayetteville, Cumberland County, and then it heads east through Sampson County, through rural Cumberland County, into Duplin County. And, that project went back to the 60s. It was a project that we pushed hard on when I was with the RPO, and a project that we've tried to coordinate and keep pushing since I moved to the MPO. And now we're finally seeing some positives from that and some improvements being made on a project like that. But that communication and that coordination between MPOs and RPOs, especially with SPOT and STI being the way it is now, is absolutely vital for especially getting some of these major rural facilities done.
One of the things with SPOT and the scoring system kind of goes along with which came first, the chicken or the egg. One of the things for Yadkin, we're looking at economic development and trying to bring in new businesses to our county, as well as our hospital closed in 2015. And one of the things that we have kept hearing from people is they need to be closer to a major highway instead of in a downtown area. So one of the projects that we have been trying to get accomplished is a new interchange on 421. And it never scores well in the project. So which comes first? The interchange, so that economic development and industries that they could access those properties, or they build on properties that they don't have access to because there isn't an interchange there. So which comes first? And so it puts us at a standstill and unable to develop some land that has a good potential to increase the economic development within our county because we don't have an interchange. So it's a matter of how can we get those projects to score better and try to get that built so it would help overall.
One of the themes that I've heard over the 30 years or so is the constant issue of our allocation for our inner city road system is diminished by the improvements to the interstate, which we didn't particularly want in the first place. And when I was in Lumberton, we widened 95 to 6 lanes, and what the folks locally said was that just means everybody's gonna fly through Lumberton at 65 and stay the night in Florence. So what the needs of DOT many times to help with a bottleneck are sometimes viewed as not viewed in the same way by the local people because they feel like the bottleneck makes people come off and stay the night or go to a restaurant in their community. Many a Chamber of Commerce will say this interstate project is going to diminish business in this community for the next 6 years. So both communities, DOT and the city, have very good arguments, but DOT's needs and the city's needs are not always the same. And one thing that we don't recognize is if you have a 30 or a 40-minute bottleneck through Lumberton or through Statesville, there are people all through the state that are saying, DOT, you need to widen this highway. I can't spend 30 minutes a day snaking through Statesville, North Carolina on I-40. So they respond to a statewide need, and it irritates everybody locally. That is just a natural friction I think we have to understand, and as much as possible get over it. But I would say that I would hope that the state would allocate their monies for interstate widening statewide and not have it diminish the allocation of money within the municipalities that the interstate goes through.
How many of you folks have worked to connect to nearby urban and rural areas? Are you part of RPOs or MPOs, any of you? What have y'all done to work with that issue, Kurt?
What was the question again?
What have you done to work with connect the nearby urban and rural areas in your region? What
Well,
are you doing as an RPO?
I was an RPO and then became an MPO actually. And
Good.
what we did is we held meetings and I attend to their meetings, their TCC or TAC meetings. We try to collaborate, understand what the priorities are, what the county, sometimes we have the same county. So we try to keep the same priorities in concert. So we participate also in the development of all the plans that touch our region. And we try to always be on the same page on the needs. So every time I hear an opportunity that might be beneficial for the MPO, I was going to forward to them and likewise, basically.
Anybody else? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm E.T. Mitchell from Craven County, and I've served on the MPO now for about 3 years. I'll be very honest, the issue of connectivity between rural and urban areas, particularly retirees getting to medical systems, is something that we are working on and struggling with. I do not think that we have been terribly successful thus far. So it's a hard problem.
How about, is technology playing a role in meeting those transportation needs?
Not really. Some of it is, working together is a great goal, but it's easy to say and hard to do across county lines, municipalities, different ways of doing things. And we're a retirement community as well, so we have the locals and transplants have different perspectives, and that's very issue. If you've been in Craven County for 4 generations, you've got a great family network to take you back and forth to Lineberger or Duke or Brody. If you're a transplant, you don't. Okay, and it's hard for people to understand that. So we're sort of an in-between. New Bern's 35,000, Craven County's 100, but it effectively is rural, and we're isolated. So I think it's taken a while for people to really understand the scope of the problem, frankly, and that's always the first step. So I would say we're on the initial steps and finding it to be difficult. We sort of fall in between. So I wish I could say we've been real successful and we have a great pilot program that everybody should try. We don't.
It's, like I said, coming from a rural area, it's hard to identify sometimes what our real problems are because it's sort of overwhelming. Like I said, the area I live in, and it's not an uneducated area, that there are more teachers with master's degrees in my county school system than any other school system in the state other than Chapel Hill, Carborough. So you think you're going to find a rural and a backward people, and they're really not. But the problems we have are we have all these rural communities, and to get them to act together, sometimes politics gets in the way. A lot of times the Department of Transportation is trying to hire a representative to work with all the RPOs, the individual RPOs. Hopefully we'll get that done before too long. They've done that for the MPOs. But it's getting people to attend the meetings. If you're in an area that's an RPO or NPO, have you ever even been to one of the meetings? I mean, they're open to the public. We can't even get the members to come, much less get Rose, our RPO representative, will hound you to death. You'll want to come because she'll be on you. But and that's what it takes if you're going to be successful. You've got to have people in the community that are dedicated, that want to contribute. It's an amazing thing to watch them finally come together and say, oh, well, we can support that. And we get a project funded and feel good. We don't get many statewide projects funded. In fact, we don't get many regional projects funded, but we do get some local projects, and we're happy. And we've got an application to work with, and we have good guidance from Division 14 and from our RPO. But then I go and I sit on some MPOs also, and everything's changing. You know, it's hard to keep. It's like herding cats, trying to get everybody headed in the same direction. But you know, that's an area we all need to work on, is our involvement in public transportation. It's like voting. If you want to complain, make sure you vote. If you want to complain about roads, make sure you participate in what it takes to get a road built anymore. Are there any questions from the public? Yes, sir. Yes.
My name is Phil Thunberg. I'm the executive director of the Lake Norman Regional Transportation Commission. And what our rural communities did was they formed my organization with an MOU. And what we do is it's Statesville, Rob's old town, and Iredell County, Troutman, Morrisville, and Davidson, North Carolina. And we formed a group that said, you know, there's no sense in us competing for every one of these dollars and then go compete at the MPO for the same dollar. You know, let's look at what we've got based on our land use plans, and let's look at the projects that are most meaningful, and let's support each other's projects. So that's one way to try and advance your projects through the existing system is that you can't just say, well, what about me? You've got to say, okay, she's going to get her project this year, I'm going to get my project next year. We're going to support each other's project, or we're going to use the resources of the MPO, which have been great, to try and find other funding, avenues other than STI for a lot of these projects. So, finally just saying that, we just need to join together and not compete against each other, but kind of go as a group to the MPO and have our projects prioritized that way. It's been extremely helpful for us.
That's a good idea, and like I said, it takes public involvement. A lot of what we get is a project gets in the pipeline and it goes through the RPOs and the MPOs, and then it goes through prioritization, and then all of a sudden the public's acting like they've never heard of it. Well, it's been 6 years to get to that point, and it's been advertised, there's been public meetings, and then Ralph was talking about my 107 project. It's been going on for 10 years. And now people are saying, what do you mean? And I don't know how you get people involved more, but transportation is one of the things that we really have the chance as public to get involved, and to sit back and not get involved is defeating the purpose. So, Ralph, how do y'all handle community meetings in Waynesville?
Gently.
Yeah.
One of the issues that you just touched on is that in the old TIP process, you'd have a project you'd put before your governing body, your regional body, and it would be prioritized. And many times, when the project begins to come to fruition, it's been 18 to 20 years. A whole new generation of residents have shown up that never heard of that, because all you've been doing is you go to the meeting, you update the 2021 TIP. Everybody says it's great, the same one as it was in 2007. But that doesn't help the new residents who have no idea what you did in 2007. And then they're shocked when this project is funded and they say, I just bought this business. Nobody told me they were going to take half my parking lot. We at the local level, and I mean local governments, could do a better job of advertising what these long priorities, these years and years and years, mean for the community, because we tend to forget them. The board members have known them. They assume everybody does. One thing that when we talk about roads, we also have to talk about technology in the same way. As Mr. Devin said, one of the biggest challenges we have in the mountains is I'd say at least half of the people don't have any internet, and if you're on the wrong side of the mountain, you can't even get dish. So they are completely lost. They can't get cell phone, they can't get dish network, and getting the word to them, getting their needs fulfilled is hard unless they actually come to a meeting. But by having DOT bring their plans to city council meetings, many of us are televised. We use that as a method, the newspapers as a method. But with technology, they're able to spool down from Raleigh very large sets of plans that we didn't even get a set back in the 1990s. There was one set, and it came from Raleigh, and they rolled it up and took it back with them, and not even the division office had a set because they were all hand done and printed in a machine. Today, Brian, I can have a citizen come in and say, I'm concerned about this interchange. What does it look like? Brian can download that one page to my planning department, and they can talk in detail about how that interchange works. So technology works great. On the downside, there's Facebook. And we were in a public meeting, and I say we, I meant Brian. This was a meeting that Brian was showing a major road system that was being widened in Waynesville. And there was a person that stood up and said, well, these aren't the real plans. The real plans are on the website. I saw those. And one of Brian's staff members said, that's a set that's like 5 years old and it's been completely changed and all. No, that's not true. And then all of a sudden Facebook takes off, and it's a conspiracy that there's a secret set of plans that's going to take your parking lot. And so there's a downside to technology that I'll be darned, I don't know what to do with. I mean, I can be the decision maker myself, and people will come in and say, well, that's not what I heard. But I'm the guy that's doing it. Well, you're lying to me. We face this disinformation age, and it's hard enough to get a project through and constructed without the naysayers out there suggesting there's a conspiracy behind everything. But I think that all of our work in transportation would work better if we could get reliable internet to the rural areas so that we can communicate with them more effectively.
You know, one thing I'll say, for a small community that has a newspaper that comes out once a week, the deadline's 4 days before it's printed, and very few people actually subscribe to it anymore, it's very hard to get communication out. We don't have a radio station. Most people do subscribe to the Winston-Salem Journal, but something that may be big happening in Yadkin County is not really important to the Winston-Salem Journal compared to everything that goes on in Winston-Salem. So getting that communication piece out there is very challenging in a smaller county. And I think Mike Pettyjohn back there can probably testify to this. They can give notices and about all the public meetings that they're having pertaining to roundabouts, and the only people who go are predominantly the elected officials or the local government staff. Very few participate from the citizenry. But then as the news gets out more, oh, they're going to put 4 roundabouts on 601, Then all the businesses get all up in arms and start going to the towns and the county and getting petitions together to try to stop it. And then it does hit Facebook. And so it just kind of spirals from there. And it's a matter of how do you deal with that and get the right information out there and getting people to understand it. In the rural counties, this is kind of going back for another second about the rural and the urban. Rural, we hate going into the cities. The traffic, the parking, going to one of the larger hospitals and trying to find your way around. We don't want to go there and get stuck. And so when transportation becomes an issue, we talk about public transportation. Well, we're kind of stuck in our ways and don't want to change. We don't want to get on a bus and go to Winston and be stuck there all day and not be able to get back. We want to get back out to our woods. And understanding that relationship, and then from the city perspective, everything's new and exciting. Yeah, let's try Uber, and everybody does Uber. And that's a way of life. And for us in Yadkin, it's like, no, we don't even want to try that. We're skeptical of it. And I think one of the analogies and things that I heard recently was about having 3 cups of coffee. And I think that if we all sat down for 3 cups of coffee between the urban and the rural have their cup and tell about how transportation is or any other issue is in the rural communities, then the urban do the same thing with their cup of coffee, and then you have another third cup that you sit there and you talk about the issues and how the two can work better together to try to solve some of the issues that we're all having.
Yeah, public involvement is absolutely a challenge. For us in Fayetteville, we have a website. We do have a Facebook page. We have a newsletter that we send out quarterly. We have a citizens mailing list. So when we do public meetings, people can sign up and they can check yes or no. Do you want to be on the citizens mailing list? And we send them information. But whenever it's time for the public to come and review our MTP or come review a human service transportation plan, our TCC members show up, and that's about it. We like to think that that's because we're sending out all the information that they need beforehand through our our public involvement processes, but that's probably not the case. But one thing we have done to try to bridge that urban-rural gap and to try to work together, because Ms. Hughes brings up a great point. A lot of the rural folks don't want to go into the city, especially not to talk about transportation. So what we've done, we have partnered with our RPO friends in the counties that we have mutual counties. So Harnett County, for instance, where we've got part of the county and Mid-Carolina has part of the county, we've done a joint public meeting when it's like spot time. So we do joint public meetings to where, anybody in the county is welcome to come, and they may have questions about what's going on in the MPO, or they may have questions about what's going on in the RPO, but we're both there together to address their concerns. Again, still getting people to show up is a challenge, but I'd say we've probably had, from an MPO standpoint, you've got those required public involvement things for certain plans and so on and so forth. But we've probably had the most success with impromptu kind of public involvement where we've gone to where the people are. So, we've set up tables at minor league sports games. We've set up tables at festivals and events of those type things, at where people can just stop by on their own time, get transportation information, sign up for the mailing list or what have you. We even one time we worked with our transit provider and took a bus out to Walmart, parked the bus and set up a table out front. And as people went into Walmart, we gave them transportation information and they could get on the bus and look at the bus. So, it's absolutely a challenge, and it's something that from the rules and regulations we have to be doing, but getting the involvement is a challenge at times.
All right. Does anybody from the audience have a question they want to ask? Yes, sir.
To follow up on your question, sir, and the cups of coffee, my experiences with CRTPO in Charlotte and the experience of the small towns that work in our MPO where one urban body has most of the votes. Can you talk about what your experience is on a body where those votes are more dispersed across the region?
Will you repeat it one more time? I'm sorry. Make sure I fully understood it. Sure. First off, let me say I think we've been very fortunate from the standpoint that our MPO, and as the gentleman said earlier, our MPO really has done a good job of viewing things from a regional standpoint versus a territorial standpoint. Fayetteville population-wise, makes up over 50% of our MPO. So, they pay the most dues. They have the most representation. But it's, even though they may have a few more seats at the table per se, we've tried to keep a mindset that, what's good for one is going to be good for you. There's some trade-offs here on certain things. We need to work together from more of a regional viewpoint and regional standpoint to address issues that are bigger than just one thing or one area. So I understand how it can be a challenge. We may just be lucky for the fact that we've got a good board and we've got good representation, that it hasn't presented a problem at this point. But yeah, I think you have to try to sell that it's what's best for the region and work together from that viewpoint.
Has anybody got another question? Any of you urban people want to talk about the problems dealing with the rural people?
There's no problems.
Yeah.
It's just
For the Yadkin County situation that you don't have Uber, have you talked to them about maybe trying to subsidize Uber coming into your place? I thought I read an article that said other communities have had some success with that.
We have not. I think it goes back that people would still even be skeptical to use it. We did have PART, which was an area transportation nonprofit group that had 2 buses that came into Yadkin and they would go to Winston, and the ridership on that was so low it was not cost effective for them, and they've stopped both of those routes. It's just hard to get people to change to different ways of doing things.
Got time for one more question.
So I'm Robin Phillips, and I'm the Executive Director of the National Rural Transit Assistance Program, and I worked for Oregon DOT and Washington DOT and helped implement the Coordinated Human Service Transportation Planning in both those states. So I've also lived out in Eastern Oregon, which was 33,000 square miles and highly rural environment. So I'm not unfamiliar with really having those distances. And we ended up doing some really interesting planning with the Coordinated Human Service Transportation in coordination with the DOT and the statewide travel survey and the movements that were happening around the state, and that ended up that these 3 counties participated in the joint process, but then in each county developed a MOU and their program of projects in relationship to their overall strategy without binding each other with that tri-county strategy. And part of the outreach we did, and I thought it wasn't really planned this way, but we ended up at the Umatilla County Fair talking to people, and the only people that were really interested in our tchotchke were the kids. But the fact is that those kids go to the store with their parents. They go to Little League. They go shopping for school clothes. They know where their dad works. They know where their mom works. So where do they go to the doctor? So those, just talking to kids about that, they're more interested in it because they aren't jaded. They think that they can be important. And so it ended up being a great source of information around the travel behavior for the region.
Anybody else? Well, guys, it's the first time in 5 years they've let me have a microphone. And I think I've been very good. Thank you.
Short break up in the main ballroom area. So some more snacks up there and get ready for the closing sessions.